In his Divinity School address, Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote, "Let me admonish you, first of all, to go alone, to refuse the good models, even those most sacred in the imagination of men, and dare to love God without mediator or veil." Or veil. It's this last part that strikes me. Dare to love God without mediator or veil. For me, I've always loved this particular quote because it's an admonishment against two things. It's against thinking that we know what God is or God isn't, but it's also an admonishment against taking even the most excellent example for granted as something to follow, rather than choosing a path that is your own, either through your life or into the sacred. And to me, this is an essential piece of contemporary Unitarian Universalism. Rather than simply receiving wisdom, we discover it, we forge it, we name it for ourselves. It is true, often in many religions, values are considered to be something that is conferred, given. That is, the values come from the religion to the people for the most part. In this faith, we know that works both ways. We know that there are permeable boundaries. We impart shared values, like I talked about in the Time for All Ages, things like compassionate community, spirited searching, and courageous action, as we say here at Northwoods. But we also, in addition to having those shared values as a people, create meaning together. And that meaning shapes what this faith will look like in the future, and what this community will look like in the future too. And this is exciting, but it's also demanding, because if we are to live our values, not just as a group, but individually, to live the life we mean to, live with intention, whatever language we use to describe that, we can't merely be receptors of the world's wisdom. We are also its creators. And for that, we have to decide for ourselves what life looks like and what shapes it. And that begins with naming what we personally value most. So you'll remember at the beginning of the service, I warned you to grab a pen and pencil. This is the time that you might want to grab it, because we're actually going to do sort of a quick and dirty brainstorming version of discerning our own individual core values as part of learning more about our shared values, because the church is made up of people. So step one, beginner's mind. Take a deep breath and empty your mind. Remember that your conscious mind doesn't have all the answers. We are making space for new insights and revelation to emerge. It's easy to presume we know the answer when we start, or to think we have found a destination in Unitarian Universalism, when in fact what we have found is the next chapter of our journey. So we adopt the mind of the beginner, someone with no preconceived notions. Step two. Create your list. So you start off this exercise by creating your list of personal values. And there was a list in the Beacon Bits. If you downloaded it, great. If you didn't, you probably know lots of words to describe the things you care about. Values are not selected. We discover and reveal them. So to help you uncover your own personal core values, Here are a couple of processes, and I'll pause after each one. This is intended to be a brainstorm. This is not a careful exercise. First thing I want you to think about, peak experiences. Consider a meaningful moment, something that really stands out as a peak experience in your life. What was happening to you? What was going on? What values were you honoring? What does that peak experience say about what matters most? Another way of thinking about this, and you can stay on the first one if you're still working on that. I want you to think about what we might call suppressed values. A time when you were angry or frustrated or upset. What was going on? What were you feeling? And what does that say about what you value? This is sort of the apophatic, would be the seminary version of thinking about your values. What was absent in those moments of distress? What does that say about what matters most? If you're like me, you may be discovering that both of those prompts gave you a different list of values, which I always think is interesting. The things that we need when they're absent and the things that bring us joy are both our values, but they're not always the same thing. A third way to brainstorm words that describe your values is to think about your code of conduct. What is most important in your life beyond your basic needs? What must you have to experience fulfillment? Creative self-expression, a certain level of health, a sense of excitement, adventure, beauty, constant learning. What are the values that you must honor in order to experience a full life? I love words. By this time in the exercise, I probably had a list that went down one column and into another on a page. So this is far too many for clarity or direction or focus. So our next step is look for patterns. For example, I might have written down values like accountability and responsibility. Those are related. I might have written down a lot of words that have to do with learning and growth and development, or things that have to do with belonging and connection. So in what you've written down or what you've thought about, what are the patterns that emerge? Now, this is a process that could take multiple hours over the course of a day or two. So think of this as the sketchbook version. And we'll be posting this online later if you want to come back and do it in a more leisurely fashion. Step 3A, because we're not quite done with this step, is to name those patterns. For example, what word do you use to describe a cluster or a pattern or a theme? For example, if I have words like honesty, transparency, integrity, candor, directness, and truth, those are all related, but what represents them most? Perhaps the most important part of that theme is integrity. Perhaps the most important part of that theme is candor or directness. Those are different focuses. What is this? What are these central themes? And don't worry about numbers here, but hopefully it'll be a smaller number than you have now. Hang on to your big list though. You may want to look at it later. So perhaps by now you have seen some themes emerging in the values you have named. Maybe you have found the right words to describe those themes. Now comes the really hard part. Find your core values. You probably still have a number of values. What we're looking for here is a top 3. You may find out ultimately that you have a few more than that, but I want you right now just to think of the top 3 themes or values that came through in this exercise as essential to your life, as that are part of your way of being, and also that support your whole self. Now later on, you might want to go back to these and give them a creative expression, some kind of personal manifesto, personal mission. That's when that longer list comes in handy. You can use more words, give it your own personal flair, something that you can look back to and look back on and measure your actions and choices against. I will give you a couple more minutes. So just as the church is the people, just as wisdom comes from many sources, I want to bring your wisdom into this sermon. So this is an additional interactive element. We're going to build a word cloud here in worship. We did this a couple months ago, so you may remember. I want you to go to menti.com. You can do this if you happen to have a phone nearby. You can use your browser on your phone. You can open a tab on your computer. Go to menti.com. When you get there, you're going to enter the code 322885. I will give you a minute to get there. go to menti.com and enter the code 322885. When you get there, you will be prompted to add your core values to the word cloud in real time as we create it. You'll watch as folks add words. Some of the words will get larger, which is a way of indicating that many people have chosen them. I've got my phone out. I'm going to go and add my words as well. As we add our own words, I'll read a few out as we go through. Love, creativity, and connection seem to be at the center for many of us. I'm adding mine now. Honesty, respect, creativity, wonder, growth. Respect, balance, kindness. Looking at some of these smaller words in here. Understanding and beauty, loyalty, humility, curiosity, resourcefulness, vision, enthusiasm, knowledge, understanding, dedication, curiosity, harmony. As you watch this list grow and change, begin to get a sense of what we as a group here today value most. And when this is completed, I will take a screenshot. I will share it on our Facebook page, and I will also share it in next week's Beacon Bits so that you can have a little tangible reminder of who we are together. Feel free to continue adding your words as we finish our time, our sermon time at least. Our core values connect us to the infinite, to the unchangeable boundaries by which we hope to live in integrity. They are our why, by which we determine the what and how of our lives, what we will do and how we will do it. This is true of both individuals and the communities they create, including Northwoods. Connecting to our own core values allows us to move out of the short term, the finite, the immediate, the reactive. And I don't know about you, but that's been particularly hard for me of late. So this is a valuable time to do this kind of exercise. It connects us to the longer vision. If we only consider the what and the how and not the why, it's easy to get stuck, to base our choices only on immediate needs rather than what Paul Tillich calls ultimate concern. To live the life we mean is perhaps one of the most sacred acts we can perform. The place where we experience both purpose and joy, connecting in both ways to all that is and to our heart's deepest longing. It is through the examination of these values, looking at them over the course of our life, using them both as guides and as measures for our actions, that we can seek to live the life we mean to, rather than the one that we stumble upon. And that, to me, is what makes life holy.